"You've been returning home late again," my wife Sarah remarked, her tone a blend of accusation and concern. "My name is Michael Davies, a 57-year-old entrepreneur and owner of Redwood Construction, a heavy machinery contracting firm I established from scratch through relentless effort and countless 16-hour workdays in Boise, Idaho. 15 years of marriage to Sarah. 15 years of camaraderie with Mark. 15 years believing I understood loyalty. All shattered that evening. Late, yes, but not uncommon. Not for a man striving to secure the prestigious Miller contract, a deal that would significantly expand our business. It's a substantial undertaking," I explained, meticulously cleaning grease from beneath my fingernails. "You know how these things are." Sarah nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. She'd been distant lately, preoccupied. Her phone always screened down on nearby surfaces, always within easy reach. She used to inquire about my day, eager to hear about my triumphs and setbacks. Now, only the quiet scraping of her fork against her dinner plate, a reheated meal for one, broke the silence. Mark called. Her response was too casual, unsettlingly so. "He wanted to know if we're still on for the weekend barbecue," she announced. I dried my hands deliberately. Mark Jenkins, my closest friend since our 20s, my son's godfather, the man who supported me through my father's passing, when the bank nearly foreclosed on our first equipment yard, and when Sarah experienced a miscarriage. "Of course," I replied. "Tell him I'll bring the steaks." She offered a fleeting smile, one that didn't reach her eyes, then glanced at her phone as it vibrated. She checked a message, her smile transformed, becoming genuine, tender, private. "Just Jessica from the book club," she said, although I hadn't asked. I nodded and headed for the shower, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. The same feeling I'd experienced when Peterson Construction attempted to undercut our bid, using cheaper Canadian equipment. The same feeling I'd felt when the bank manager patronizingly called me son, while explaining our loan rejection. That gut feeling that something was profoundly wrong, that I needed to pay close attention. Under the hot water, I pondered Mark's new truck, Sarah's sudden enthusiasm for Thursday night book club meetings, and how they both seemed to find simultaneous reasons to check their phones during our last dinner together. I'd ignored the warning signs for weeks, perhaps months, but ignoring decay doesn't prevent its spread. I first met Mark Jenkins at a construction site in 2000. He was the site supervisor. I was subcontracting the heavy equipment operations. We bonded over classic motorcycles during lunch breaks, and by the project's end, we were weekend riding companions. 3 years later, when I launched Redwood Construction, Mark was my first call. He invested $35,000, most of his savings, for a 15% stake, never questioning my decisions, even when we barely broke even during those initial years. Sarah and I had been married for 8 years by then. She'd stood by me when I was just an hourly wage operator, when we lived in that cramped one-bedroom apartment with the leaky ceiling. She believed in my dream, even when her parents dismissed me as a man with dirt under his fingernails, and nothing to show for it. A home, our son David, now a college student studying architecture, and a life where her parents ultimately retracted their criticisms at our 26th anniversary celebration. Her father conceded that I'd done quite well after all, eyeing the lakeside property we'd recently purchased. Mark was present for it all, the bachelor party, serving as best man and waiting anxiously in the hospital room when David was born. The three of us, Sarah, Mark, and I, were inseparable, an unbreakable triangle, or so I believed. The initial fissure appeared last Christmas. Mark's wife, Deborah, had left him the previous year, claiming she needed space. We celebrated the holidays as a family unit. I noticed how Sarah touched Mark's arm when she laughed at his jokes, how their eyes lingered a beat too long when they believed I wasn't observing. I dismissed it, telling myself it was inconsequential. Mark had been my friend for 15 years.
You don't discard that over a hunch.
Then came the missed calls on her phone from Jessica, at unusual hours, the new perfume she wore to book club, her startled reaction whenever I entered a room while she was texting. Mark started finding reasons to visit our house while I was at job sites, offering to assist Sarah with the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, or dropping off documents he could have easily emailed. I remained silent, working late to secure our future, to expand the business we'd built together. Every man has blind spots when it comes to those he trusts most. Mark was staring me in the face, yet I looked away, until I simply couldn't anymore. It was a Tuesday evening in May when everything imploded. I finished early at the Miller site. We'd finally won the contract, and decided to surprise Sarah by coming home for dinner instead of ordering takeout. I stopped to buy a bottle of her favorite wine, hoping to reconnect, believing I could mend whatever was tearing us apart. The house was eerily quiet when I arrived. Too quiet for 7 o'clock in the evening. Sarah's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't in the kitchen or living room. I placed the wine on the counter, noticing her phone beside the sink, its screen illuminated by an incoming message. I've never been one to check my wife's phone. I'd never needed to. But the timing, the silence, the growing knot in my gut, too large to ignore, prompted my hand to move before I could second-guess myself. Left my jacket upstairs. Don't tell Michael I stopped by. My body went cold, not with shock, but with a chilling certainty, like the final tumblers of a lock falling into place. I ascended the stairs slowly, deliberately, listening. The master bedroom door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open to find Sarah sitting on the edge of our bed, holding Mark's leather jacket, the one I'd gifted him for his 50th birthday. She looked up, saw me, and the color drained from her face. "Michael," she whispered, the single word hanging heavy between us. I held up her phone, the screen still lit. He left his jacket. She didn't deny it, didn't attempt to concoct a story about helping him with paperwork or planning a surprise party for me. She simply sat there, her shoulders slumped, still clutching his jacket. "You're always working late," she finally said, her gaze fixed on the floor. He was there for me. I nodded slowly, feeling strangely calm. "I understand. I just need some time to process this." I turned and descended the stairs, grabbing my keys from the hook by the door. I drove to the deserted Redwood office, sat at my desk in the darkness, staring at nothing. It wasn't just the betrayal by my wife. It was Mark. 15 years of friendship. 15 years of trust. The man who'd helped me build everything I possessed, now attempting to take the most valuable part. I retrieved my desk bottle, the fine whiskey we'd opened that very morning upon securing the Miller contract, and poured myself a generous measure. I didn't drink it. I just stared at the amber liquid catching the light from the parking lot outside. Equipment fleets. A company. A marriage. Now I was going to dismantle something, piece by meticulous piece. I retrieved my phone and dialed my lawyer's private number. I gave Sarah 3 days of space. I stayed in the guest room, didn't inquire about her whereabouts or her conversations when her phone rang. I was polite, detached, processing, exactly how a stunned husband should behave. What she didn't see was what transpired during business hours. The morning after discovering Mark's jacket, I met with Gregory Miller, the corporate attorney who'd helped structure Redwood Construction when we first incorporated. We sat in his downtown office, the blinds partially drawn against the bright spring sunlight. "You want to invoke Article 8? He stated, his eyebrows raised. It wasn't a question. Yes. Article 8 was my safety net. When Mark and I formalized his investment 15 years prior, Gregory had suggested including a clause to protect the company if either partner engaged in actions that could damage its reputation. At the time, I'd envisioned gambling debts or DUIs, things that could alienate clients in our conservative industry. I never imagined I'd need it because my partner was sleeping with my wife. "This will necessitate buying him out at predetermined rates," Gregory cautioned. 10 cents on the dollar of the current valuation. I nodded. "I know. And you have proof." I slid my phone across the desk, the text messages I'd downloaded from Sarah's phone while she slept. The GPS history showing Mark's truck parked at our house during work hours while I was at job sites. The emails I discovered when I finally checked her laptop. Gregory reviewed it all, his expression professionally impassive. "This will become unpleasant, Michael." "It already is." Flannel shirt, work jeans, that leather birthday jacket, like a man with nothing to conceal, like my friend. "Hey buddy," he said, settling into the chair opposite my desk. "What's so urgent it couldn't wait until morning?" I slid the folder across to him. "Article 8 dissolution papers. I'm buying your shares." His face shifted from confusion to shock to anger in a matter of seconds as he flipped through the documents. "What in the world is this, Article 8? Actions detrimental to the company's reputation. Where is this coming from?" I maintained a calm tone. "You know precisely where it's coming from, Mark. Is this about Sarah?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice as if we were conspirators. "Look, I know things haven't been ideal between you two. She's been lonely, man. It just happened. 15 years of friendship, and that's your explanation. It just happened." He ran a hand through his hair. "You've been absent, Michael, always working, building this precious company. When was the last time you truly listened to her, actually showed up?" His voice took on a righteous tone. You pushed her right into my arms. I almost laughed. So it's my fault. I'm not signing this, he declared, pushing the folder back. You can't force me out over a personal matter. Actually, I can. Section 4, paragraph 3. Read it. He glanced down, reading the fine print he'd signed 15 years ago without a second thought. His face darkened. You do this to me after everything we've built together. You did this to us, I corrected. I'm simply adhering to the contract. Mark stood up, knocking back his chair. Sarah won't tolerate this. She'll support me. I merely nodded. You should call her. He pulled out his phone, his fingers furiously tapping at the screen as he stormed out. I sat back in my chair, awaiting the next domino to fall. The following morning, Mark appeared at my house. I was in the kitchen making coffee when he burst through the front door as if he owned the place. Perhaps in his mind, he believed he did. What did you say to her? He demanded. His face flushed with anger. I took my time pouring the coffee. Who? Sarah. She's not answering my calls. Her sister said she left town yesterday. That was news to me. I'd given her space. I hadn't tracked her movements, but I maintained a neutral expression as I sipped my coffee. Perhaps she needed time to reflect. Mark slammed his fist on the counter. Don't play games. You threatened her, didn't you? Made her choose between me and your money? I carefully set down my mug. I didn't have to threaten anyone, Mark. I showed her the same paperwork I showed you, the dissolution of our partnership. And I showed her the prenuptial agreement she signed when we got married, the one with the infidelity clause. His face went slack. What infidelity clause? The one that stipulates that if either party commits adultery, they forfeit all rights to community property acquired during the marriage, including ownership stake in Redwood Construction. This was the detail Mark had never known. When Sarah and I married, her parents insisted on a prenup to protect their family's assets. I'd agreed, but added my own stipulations. We'd both signed it, then filed it away, never anticipating we'd need it. You're lying, Mark said. But his voice lacked conviction. I walked to my home office, unlocked the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, and retrieved a folder. It contained the original prenup, bearing both our signatures, along with the amendment clarifying the infidelity clause. Mark read it, then looked up at me with something akin to awe. You've been planning this for 15 years? No, I said honestly. I've been protecting what's mine for 15 years. There's a difference. He sank into a chair, the fight draining from him. So that's it? You're stripping us both of everything? Not everything, I corrected. Just what you took from me. But there was more. Mark didn't know. While he'd been busy destroying our friendship and my marriage, I'd been reviewing all of Redwood's client contracts. Most were signed with my personal guarantee, not the company's. The clients were loyal to me, not to our logo. Our equipment rentals billed to projects that never used them, expense accounts that didn't match receipts, vendor payments that seemed inflated. All managed by Mark. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out another folder. The audit of your expense accounts for the past 3 years. Mark's eyes widened. Michael, that's not what? Not embezzlement. Because the accountant says it looks precisely like embezzlement. $185,000 worth. The blood drained from his face. It was temporary. I was going to put it back. With what money? Your divorce cleaned you out 2 years ago. I needed it for Deborah's settlement, he admitted. Then for the down payment on the new house. Then to impress. He trailed off. To impress my wife, I finished for him. He stared at the floor. What are you going to do? I closed the folder. That depends on whether you sign the dissolution papers. Sign, and this audit never sees the light of day. Fight me, and I'll take this to the district attorney. Mark looked at me for a long moment. You've thought of everything, haven't you? No, I said softly. I never thought I'd have to think of this. 600 words, plan in motion. I gave Mark 24 hours to sign the papers. He did it in 12. By the end of the week, his 15% stake in Redwood Construction was mine at 10 cents on the dollar, a fraction of its value after we'd landed the Miller contract. What he didn't know was that I'd already contacted Miller Construction. I'd personally guaranteed our performance on their project, assuring them that the internal restructuring at Redwood wouldn't affect their timeline or quality. Old man Miller himself had clapped me on the shoulder and said, "We always knew we were hiring you, Michael, not your company." While Mark was clearing out his office, I was meeting with our 3 other major clients, securing their business with personal handshakes and revised contracts. By the time he'd finished packing his photos and coffee mug, I'd locked down 85% of our annual revenue with ironclad agreements that followed me. not the Redwood name. Sarah returned after a week at her sister's place in Seattle. I was in the backyard splitting firewood when her car pulled into the driveway. She approached cautiously, as if testing thin ice. "We need to talk," she said. I set down the axe. About us. About what happens next." Her voice was steady, rehearsed. She'd been practicing this conversation. "I've already filed for divorce," I said. "Your copy is on the kitchen counter." She blinked, thrown off her script. "Just like that. 15 years of marriage, and you're throwing it away without even trying to fix things." The irony almost made me laugh. "Almost. You already made that decision," I said, picking up another log. "I'm simply handling the paperwork." "Michael, people make mistakes. Marriages recover from affairs all the time." I aligned the axe. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A choice we'd made every day for months. I brought the axe down, cleanly splitting the log. The crack echoed across the yard. "What about the house?" she asked, shifting to practical matters now that the emotional appeal had failed. "And your retirement accounts? My lawyer says I'm entitled to half of everything." I set down the axe and faced her directly. "Your lawyer should read your prenup more carefully. Specifically the infidelity clause." Her face went pale. "That old thing. We signed that 20 years ago. It can't possibly." "It can and it does," I said, cutting her off. "But I'm not leaving you with nothing. You'll get the vacation cabin and a settlement. Enough to start over. Not enough to share with Mark." Her eyes widened. "Mark? What does he have to do with the divorce?" "Nothing anymore. He's been bought out of Redwood. The money he embezzled is being repaid through the sale of his shares." She sat down heavily on the garden bench. "Embezzled? What are you talking about?" I realized then that she didn't know. Mark had been stealing to maintain the lifestyle that impressed her, to afford the gifts, dinners, and weekend getaways. He'd betrayed not just me but her expectations as well. "Ask him yourself," I said, picking up the axe again. "Though I doubt he'll take your call now that he's lost his golden goose." She stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps she was. The man who would have forgiven her anything, who would have worked himself to death to provide for her. That man died the night I found Mark's jacket on our bed. "Who are you?" she whispered. I split another log. "Someone who's done carrying people who are planning to drop me." 6 weeks after finding Mark's jacket, I sat in a conference room at Granite Peak Inc., the second largest construction company in southern Idaho. Across from me were their CEO, Albert Carter, and their lead counsel. Between us lay a stack of papers, the acquisition agreement for Redwood Construction. "One last chance to reconsider, Michael," Albert said. "Once you sign, there's no turning back." I reached for the pen. "I'm not the one who'll be regretting this." The plan had come together almost serendipitously. 2 weeks after forcing Mark out, I'd received a call from Albert. Granite Peak had been trying to expand their heavy equipment division for years. With the Miller contract secured and my company's reputation stronger than ever, the timing was perfect. I could have refused. I could have continued building Redwood myself. But the company had become tainted, a constant reminder of betrayal. I needed a clean break, a fresh start. So I'd made a deal. Granite Peak would acquire Redwood Construction for twice its market value, on the condition that I remain as division president for 2 years, bringing my client relationships and expertise with me. Afterward, I'd be free to retire or pursue something new. I signed my name on the final page, sliding the contract back across the table. Albert's secretary appeared at the door. "Mr. Carter, someone is here to see Mr. Davies, a Mr. Jenkins." Albert looked at me. I nodded. Mark walked in, his face tight with barely controlled rage. "You sold the company without even offering me the chance to buy back in." I stood, extending my hand to Albert. "Thank you for your time. I look forward to our partnership." As the Granite Peak executives departed, I finally turned to Mark. "You're right. I sold it. For $18 million. His mouth dropped open. 18. "But my shares were worth about $700,000 at the time you bought them back from me. For $140,000. The magnitude of his loss hit him all at once. "You son of a—" "I'd be careful with the next words out of your mouth," I said quietly. "You're standing on very thin ice as it is." Mark's fists clenched at his sides. "This isn't over, actually," I said, collecting my copy of the contract. "It is." 1 year later, I stood on the deck of my new cabin overlooking Payette Lake. Not the vacation home Sarah received in the divorce. A new one. Larger. with a workshop where I was restoring a 1968 Triumph Bonneville I'd coveted since I was 19. The divorce had been finalized for 10 months. The settlement was precisely what I'd initially offered. Fair, but not generous. She'd accepted it without a fight once her lawyer confirmed the prenuptial agreement would hold up in court. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she and Mark had attempted a relationship for a few months before it imploded. He couldn't maintain the lifestyle she expected. Not after losing his stake in Redwood and having his reputation tarnished in our industry. Last I heard, she'd moved to Denver, attempting a fresh start. Mark fared worse. After our confrontation at Granite Peak, he tried to launch his own equipment rental business, targeting the same clients we'd cultivated over the years. Word had spread about his departure from Redwood, about the accounting irregularities during his tenure. No one would work with him. He'd ended up accepting a salaried position with a small firm in Montana, a significant demotion for a man who'd once owned a portion of the largest equipment contractor in southern Idaho. I took a sip of my coffee, watching a bald eagle soar over the lake. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from David, my son. He was coming home for the weekend and wanted to know if I was free for dinner. I texted back, always free for you. At 58, I wasn't where I'd envisioned being at this stage of my life. My marriage was over. My best friend was a stranger. The company I'd built was in someone else's hands, even if I still managed it day to day. But I was standing on my own deck, breathing fresh air, with my son still in my life and $18 million in investments working for me. I'd lost what wasn't real and kept what mattered. Some men spend their entire lives learning whom they can trust. I learned it in one brutal, expensive night, a lesson worth every penny.